Chapter 8 of The Semi-Attached Couple, by Emily Eden. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. And now, whatever might have been Helen's fears or hopes, her fate was sealed. She had turned to that page of life over which she had lingered with distressful doubt, and now it must be read, though on herself partly must she depend for the interpretation of the characters it bore. St. Mary's Abbey, at which her honeymoon was to be passed, was the most magnificent of all Lord Teviot's residences. It almost calls for a formal description. But how can any one be expected to write what no one ever reads when it is written? That pert Nancy, now by the grace of presumption styling herself Mrs. Tomkinson, addressed a letter to Mrs. Hervey, the housekeeper at Eskdale Castle, in which she gave her views of St. Mary's Abbey, and in her sketchy way she succeeds so well in the descriptive art that it is impossible to join in the total contempt with which Mrs. Douglas looked down upon her from the marble terrace.
Dear Mrs. Hervey, I hope this will find you in good health and spirits, not forgetting all other friends in the old house. Me and my lady are quite well, and have no reason to complain that we have changed our abode for the worst. We were very nervous that day when we left you, me in particular, that had been sitting in the barouche, baked to a jelly, and watching all those jewel boxes while my lady was bidding good-bye, and with that great mob of people staring at me. But Mr. Phillips was very attentive, and helped me to bow to them as we drove off. He seems a superior young man, quite a London-bred servant, and quite confidential with my lord, which was the reason why he was left at St. Mary's during my lord's courtship, because he knew all the plans about the furniture. We went at such a pace that I was quite giddy, but found great comfort in the sandwiches and gingerbread and chickens and buns that she put into the carriage, which was a kind thought, for otherwise we should have gone the whole 50 miles without refreshment. When we had arrived all but a mile, my lord's tenants met us, and took the horses off from my lord and lady, and dragged them their own selves, and they came to drag us, but Mr. Phillips explained that we was only own man and lady's maid, and that our horses would be let alone. So they hurrahed and threw flowers, and it was very agitating. When we arrived, my lord made a speech, and my lady made a curtsy, and I got the imperials and boxes in as soon as I could. I was terrified lest any of our new trousseau should be stole. Dear Mrs. Hervey, St. Mary's is a most beautiful place, and the great mirrors in the ballroom are alone worth coming to see, and I have not power to describe the scenery. There is a lake quite full of water, like the lakes abroad, and endless woods filled with the finest trees, that seem to run for miles and miles, and the gardens that beat our gardens at the castle all to nothing. The furniture would please you in particular, chiefly silk and damask, but some rooms with velvet, and my lady's suite of rooms is what I can't describe, straw-coloured satin embroidered with real flowers, and such cabinets and china, and on the dressing-table a service of gold plate with my lady's name on it. Mrs. Nelson won't like to see it, she was so set up about her ladies. In every respect I feel satisfied with the accommodations for me and my lady, except that I was obliged to ask for another wardrobe, and to tell Mrs. Stevens that I was accustomed to a larger looking-glass in my own room. Mrs. Stevens and me seem inclined to be very friendly. She is the very moral of a housekeeper in a romance, quite an old lady. We are a princely establishment, and sit down 12 in the steward's room with wine, and a man and boy to wait. Mrs. Stevens and me joke each other about our beaux, for there are 10 gentlemen, and only us 2 ladies, and Mr. Phillips has, of course, the precedence. I hope to pick up a little French between the cook and the confectioner. I wish you would ask Mrs. Warren whether, when Lady Amelia married, she did not get all her ladyship's shawls with the rest of the things. My lady kept a suit of Brussels, and I have nothing to say again that, for I believe Brussels lace is what every lady has a right to keep. But she also kept 2 shawls, which I believe are my perquisites, as the lady wore them before my lord proposed. I want to know if you and Mrs. Warren and Mrs. Nelson think that their being real ingy makes a difference. My mind misgives me it does. It is not for the lucre of gold I speak, nor would I begrudge my lady the shawls, nor the gown off my back if she wanted it. But I hate to see poor servants defrauded, and if the shawls is my due, I shall take the liberty of mentioning it. I had not time to tell you of the pride of that Mrs. Douglas, who met me on the wedding day, and said, "Fine times for you, Nancy, your head will be turned." I was mad with myself afterwards for having made her a curtsy, and said, "Yes, indeed, ma'am," when I might as well have said something sharp. If Lady Eskdale asks if you had heard from me, will you please make my duty, and say that my lady is quite well, and has had no cold or headache. Mrs. Stevens thinks her the beautifulest lady she ever saw, and compliments me high on my manner of hairdressing. I remain, dear Mrs. Hervey, your kind friend, Anne Tomkinson.
End of chapter 8.